Class is now in session. I'm Professor Rocky, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Blue Jackets, in which the Sharks have managed to win 3-2. So now, out of the holiday break, they are a record of 3-1-1. All three of those victories coming against three Metropolitan Division teams, all of them who had actually come into these respective games on a hot streak. So it's nice to see that the Sharks have been able to deal with some of the better teams in the NHL at the moment. Now, coming into this game, of course, the Blue Jackets very hampered by injuries, but they had gone 12 games in a row with a point, and now this puts the end to that streak. The first period was mostly uneventful, a few decent chances either way, and of course the Sharks did think they got the first goal of this game with Shellman. However, it would be determined that Stefan Noesen was offside, so we would go into the second period tied at 0. In the second period, there would be some goals. Markley Goodrow right out of the penalty box to make it 1-0. It would be Werenski very soon after tying it up before Evander Kane would get his 15th and take a 2-1 lead for the Sharks, which would be brought into the third period. And this Sharks third period, maybe to show that the Sharks have turned some sort of a leaf at this point in the new year, was actually very, very strong. Besides the last couple of minutes where, of course, the Blue Jackets ended up getting the goalie pulled, the Sharks were mostly dominant in this period. It would be Kevin Labanc who would get the very necessary goal in the last 3 or so minutes before Werenski would make it very interesting, and with 30 seconds later to make it 3-2, but eventually the Sharks would hold on to the lead. So just a pretty solid 60 minutes from San Jose, which is something that, besides the Detroit game, we have been seeing some more of here in the last few games. First thing to talk about would be Aaron Dell, as he yet again got the start here tonight, and he yet again only lets in here these 2 goals. A pretty solid game for Aaron Dell. The first goal by Werenski was tough. It's a sneaky backhand, even if it didn't have that much juice on it, and the second one he didn't have much of a chance on after it deflects off of a player in front, if I'm not mistaken, goes directly to Werenski for the empty net. Otherwise, Dell made a few very, very nice saves. In particular, I thought Nyquist here for the Jackets looked quite good here tonight. Dell managed to keep him off the boards. And so the Sharks do play another game tomorrow that will be against the Washington Capitals. I doubt Dell gets the start again, considering the Capitals game is also an afternoon game. So I suspect Jones would get the start, which is quite interesting, honestly, because we saw that the Sharks were coming up to the game against the Red Wings and the Penguins, and Dell was given the game against the tougher opponent, the Pittsburgh Penguins, while Jones was given the Red Wings. But now coming up to this back-to-back against the Jackets and the Capitals, it's no secret the Capitals are the much more offensively gifted team with the likes of Ovechkin and Carlson and Kuznetsov, and yet Dell was given this one while Jones was given the tougher one tomorrow. Will likely be given the tougher one tomorrow, I should say. So we'll see how Jones performs then. Next, I will talk about the D pairs, and I couldn't really decide which one to talk about because I thought there were a couple that were just very good for the Sharks, and these seem to be the D pairs the Sharks might be able to roll with for the majority of the rest of the season. I thought Shemek and Ferraro, as they did against that Detroit game, they've just been looking so good together, and as well as Burns and Dillon. Burns in particular looked very good in this game, but so did Brendan Dillon, and it's kind of strange because Shemek and Dillon play pretty similar games. Maybe Dillon is slightly more physical, but Shemek certainly has that as a part of his game, and so the fact that Shemek and Burns weren't really working out for a few games in a row, while Ferraro and Dillon also weren't really working that great, and yet you swap them around and all of a sudden you've got 2 very good defensive pairings, is kind of strange to see, but it was still very, very nice. I thought Vlasic and Carlson surprisingly were the worst defensive pairing here for the Sharks. In particular, Carlson made a few key misplays in this game, but they were obviously very, very good just a couple of weeks ago. I suspect and I expect that they will get back to that level eventually, and so the Sharks might actually have 3 solid defensive pairings moving forward, which is good to see. As I said, the Sharks can't really afford to play much of a run-and-gun style of offense like they had been trying to do earlier on in the season, and so now these few 2-goal games in a row where they're only giving up 2 or even 1 goal to the opposing team should bode well for the Sharks moving forward. Next, I will talk about Joe Thornton. Just the other game, he moved into 7th place, solely in 7th place all-time for assists, passing Adam Oates, and he has another great one here tonight on the Kevin Labanc goal. Joe Thornton was just making a lot of things happen, really recovering from that tough start he had to the season this year, and it again begs the question once more, does Joe Thornton then have another year in him? Is this something that Joe Thornton can sustain? I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure Thornton, in the midst of the season is probably having so much fun still playing that he expects to try and go another year, but when it comes to the off season, when everything has cooled down and everything like that, it'll be interesting to see what Thornton decides to do. But it's pretty clear here, even though it hasn't been consistent this season, or at least when you consider the start of it, Thornton has looked good, and he still has looked at a similar speed to the rest of the NHL. And then finally, I will talk about Shellman on the fourth line. As I said, he did have a goal taken away from him in this game due to his teammate being offside, but he looked quite good in this game. And this is one of the things that the Sharks have been struggling this season. But in the past few years for the Sharks, even when they were a very good team, one of the things that they have been missing a lot of is that fourth line. The fourth line has never really been that much of a factor for the San Jose Sharks in the past. I feel like the last time it was probably Eric Fehr in 17-18 when he showed up to the team. He really added an interesting element to that fourth line. I think Stefan Noesen has done a lot of that, but also some credit should be given to Shellman. They brought him up from the AHL. They tried Blichfeld at first as the first AHL experiment. It didn't work out, but Shellman has looked a lot better. He's even been given some time on the penalty kill, which is probably something we never would have saw with Peter DeBoer as coach. So it's nice to see Booner is giving him a chance, and it's nice to see that he is responding well, and this fourth line has actually become not a huge threat, of course, but still, a line that can potentially chip in a goal here or there, which again, as I said, something that the Sharks haven't really had much of in the past few years. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action tomorrow with yet another afternoon game against the league best Washington Capitals. This is probably going to be the toughest game of the season. The Sharks have already played against the Capitals once, and they were mostly dominated in that game, and now they're coming up to them again with a second straight afternoon game on this back-to-back. The Capitals, as I said, best team in the league. This is going to be an extremely tough game to win, and if the Sharks don't end up winning that one, I certainly wouldn't put any blame on them. We'll see how Jones responds in particular, but see how the rest of the team can respond to the immense amount of pressure that's likely coming their way from the Capitals. Class dismissed.